American sanctions have led to a collapse in Russia's oil exports, primarily affecting those transported by the Shadow Fleet. This is discussed in a report by the analytical agency KRIA. In February 2025, sea exports of crude oil dropped by 9% compared to January, while deliveries using Shadow Fleet tankers increased by 21%. As of January 2025, aside from Washington's restrictions, 153 tankers were under EU sanctions and 133 were under United Kingdom sanctions. This list partially overlapped, but Ukraine's partners have yet to agree on coordinated monitoring to track where and to whom Russia's shadow resources are being sent.
India, Singapore, and Turkey follow far behind. In reality, the bulk of threshold oil is sent mainly to India and China. Among the primary actual consumers of oil, Turkey ranks third, with smaller amounts going to Myanmar, the UAE, South Korea, Brunei, and Egypt, according to customs data. However, oil transfers between vessels directly at sea are common, meaning it's difficult to be certain that the information provided in customs declarations matches the actual reality. From the Insider publication.
In January 2025, the Shadow Fleet accounted for 86% of Russia's crude oil exported by sea. The Russian Federation uses flags from foreign countries to circumvent sanctions, such as Panama, Barbados, and Sierra Leone. Additionally, companies linked to the United Arab Emirates, the US, and Greek tankers help illegally transport oil to Moscow.
Among those aiding Russia in oil exports, Greek tankers make up a significant portion. The owners of these vessels are often obscure shell companies with little known about them. However, among the colorful names of companies whose ships have sailed from Russia's part of the Gulf of Finland to the Mediterranean and have lightened their loads, TMS Tankers stands out. According to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, it is beneficially owned by billionaire George Economou, and according to Lloyd's Bulletin, he still owns the company. From the Insider publication.
In addition to the tens of billions of dollars in net profit each month that Russia spends to continue its war against Ukraine, the Russian Federation's Shadow Fleet poses a significant threat to the environment. Identifying the vessels is difficult as crews turn off transporters or send false coordinates. Non-certified tankers, often with minimal maintenance, threaten oil spills in international waters, warn environmentalists.
The international environmental organization Greenpeace maintains its own list of Russia's shadow fleet. As of March 2025, 192 suspicious tankers are recorded in it. The majority of them operate in the Baltic Sea, and many of the vessels are over 15 years old. The crews of these tankers are often made up of inexperienced sailors, and the ships are insufficiently insured against risks such as oil spills. From the Deutsche Welle publication.
Sanctions against the Russian Federation, including its Shadow Fleet, are one of the two key pressure points on Russia to force it to sit at the negotiation table. This was stated by the Prime Minister of the UK during a press conference after a virtual meeting with leaders of the coalition of the willing to support Ukraine.
We agreed we will keep increasing the pressure on Russia, keep the military aid flowing to Ukraine, and keep tightening the restrictions on Russia's economy, to weaken Putin's war machine and bring him to the table. President Trump has offered Putin the way forward to a lasting peace. Now we must make this a reality. So this is the moment to keep driving towards the outcome that we want to see, to end the killing, a just and lasting peace in Ukraine, and lasting security for all of us.
Let us remind you, the Kremlin used Shadow Fleet tankers as a weapon to damage internet cables, gas pipelines, and electrical lines at the bottom of the Baltic Sea. Russia's Shadow Fleet often serves as a cover for Russian military operations. Reported by Alexandra Zaslavets, Larissa Petruk, UATV News.
The topic of EU sanctions against Russia could be discussed in peace negotiations with Moscow. This was stated by US Secretary of State Marco Rubio in a media commentary. He thus confirmed Europe's involvement in peace talks, emphasizing that they should be present at least at a minimal level to address sanctions and frozen Russian assets.
I think what it says in the statement is that they raised the need for the Europeans. But I have already said publicly the Europeans have issued a series of sanctions against the Russian Federation, and I would imagine that in any negotiation, if we get there, hopefully, with the Russians, that they will raise the European sanctions that have been imposed upon them. So I think that the issue of European sanctions are going to be on the table, not to mention what happens with the frozen assets and the like. Marco Rubio, US Secretary of State, in a media commentary.
European countries have become more active regarding participation in peace negotiations, following a statement by U.S. Special Envoy for Ukraine and Russia, Kate Kellogg, in mid-February. He noted that Washington did not see the EU's presence in the peace process. Since then, EU countries have held several meetings focused on increasing defense spending and strengthening support for Ukraine. Additionally, on March 11, the European Parliament adopted a resolution calling for increased pressure on Russia and security guarantees for Kyiv. The resolution also mentions the possibility of confiscating frozen Russian assets in Europe.
Russia must pay for the massive damage caused in Ukraine. Russian sovereign assets immobilized under EU sanctions must be confiscated and used for Ukraine's defense and reconstruction. From the European Parliament resolution.
After Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the G7 countries decided to freeze Russian assets worth $300 billion, with approximately $250 billion held in EU nations. In July 2024, EU countries agreed to transfer the proceeds from these frozen assets to Ukraine, fearing that outright confiscation could violate the principle of sovereign immunity under international law. Recently, discussions on this issue have reignited. On March 12, the French parliament supported the EU's call to confiscate Russian assets. Meanwhile, the European Parliament held another debate on the matter, where most MPs expressed support for the measure.
Such reparation must, as far as possible, wipe out all the consequences of the illegal act and re-establish the situation, which would in all probability have existed if that act had not been committed, and includes reparation for both material and moral damage. The obligation to provide reparation can be invoked by any state under international law. The General Assembly of the United Nations has already recognized that Russia must bear the legal consequences of all of its internationally wrongful acts, including making reparation for the injury, including any damage caused by such acts. Michael Gahler, member of the European Parliament.
Russia is demanding the removal of some sanctions as part of peace negotiations. However, the EU has stated that it has no intention of lifting restrictions on the aggressor state. Instead, it plans to tighten them. On February 24, 2025, the European Union adopted its 16th package of sanctions targeting Russia's shadow fleet, banking sector, and trade operations. Brussels is now working on the next package.
We have to be really strong against the aggressor and achieve peace through strength. EU is standing behind Ukraine. We have promised to do so and are doing so. So today we adopted important decisions. We adopted the 16th package of sanctions that includes several items, and we continue to work on the 17th package. We have to put Ukraine in a position of strength so that Ukraine is able to say no to a bad deal.
The sanctions are set to expire on March 15. The European Council renewed them every 6 months. An unanimous agreement from all 27 EU member states is required to extend them, but Hungary is blocking the extension. Budapest is demanding the removal of 8 individuals from the sanctions list. EU Foreign Affairs and Security Policy spokesperson Anita Hipper stated that the EU is determined to extend the sanctions on the time and reach a consensus among all 27 countries. Reported by Katerina Bastun, Andriy Dmitrenko, UATV News.